I'm visiting Stockholm this week, and that gave me a great opportunity to meet up with Viktor and Natalia and talk about something we all really care about, which is helping teams do great work. So we're here to have a conversation about that today.
Yes, and when we talk about this, we usually come back to that there are at least 4 fundamental conditions that are important in order for teams to be able to do great work. And that's what we are here to talk about today.
And when you say fundamental conditions for teams, what do you mean by that?
Well, I find that very often companies put a lot of effort into hiring great people. They don't put a lot of effort into creating a great environment so that those people can actually do good work. And there's significant research from Hackman and Wageman that says that if you don't have the conditions, no matter how brilliant a coach you have, your team is only going to be able to improve so much. But if you pay attention to the conditions and then you add great coaching, you can really increase the ability of a team to self-manage and self-organize and do great work.
And one thing that I've encountered a lot when I work with clients and companies is that when they bring me in as an Agile coach or colleagues, or they bring in several Agile coaches, they ask the coaches to, hey, come in and work with the teams. But usually what problems they have aren't within the teams, it's within the environment. And so when the coaches then bring these issues up with the management team, they get surprised, like, oh, I thought you were here to fix the teams. Why aren't you fixing the teams? Yeah, but we are trying to help by looking at the environment. And so we thought we'd talk about this.
Yeah. So what are those fundamental conditions for the teams?
So we listed, so there are quite many, but there are four the
main categories. Yeah.
And they are, the first is that it's important that a team has a compelling mission. It's important that they have the required skill set to deliver value. It's also important that they get feedback from customers, stakeholders, and users. And in addition, it's important that they have can focus.
And in this video, we'll focus on 2 of the conditions, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk mostly today about the mission, the compelling goal, and having a reasonably good fit for skill set. You never have the perfect team, but if we can get a reasonably good fit, then that is usually sufficient, at least to get started. Yeah.
So if we start with compelling mission, why is it important to have a compelling mission for the team? What happens if they don't have it?
Flailing, conflict, delivering the wrong thing.
Yeah, I think one thing I encounter a lot is some teams might say, oh, can you come and help us improve our planning meetings? And they're long and people don't like them, and they spend 1 day in planning for every month. And that's usually a smell for me, and then I start investigating that more. So long planning meetings is usually one way. Subdivided teams, you might have a team of 9 people, but you're actually having 3 teams within that, and they're usually never working across these subdivided teams. And that could be a bad smell of, okay, we actually have 3 missions here.
But those are also related to composition of the team. But when you say compelling mission, what's compelling mission? What's compelling enough? When do we know that it's good enough?
Well, people need to want to work with the mission. So the mission, a team could have a mission that is very clear, but if people don't want to work with it, they're going to start doing other stuff, procrastinating, or it's going to divide the team.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think about the mission or the goal for the team in terms of what problem are we solving or what benefit are we creating for what group of people. And if a team can say that succinctly, then they usually have a clear idea about what they're supposed to be producing, right? But if I hear a team talking about, well, we want to have a standardized way to do onboarding, it's like, that's not compelling, and it's not really clear. I mean, what does it mean? What's the benefit of it? Who is benefited by it? So I think having that clear mission and understanding how it's helping somebody is something that helps people move in complementary direction and complementary action rather than, going off on 3 different sub-teams or just cherry picking whatever it seems interesting or fighting forever. I met one group that had been bickering for 2 years about what they were supposed to be working on, and it was largely because they didn't have a clear, compelling mission.
Having compelling mission sounds simple. Hearing you and knowing some things as well, I know that it's not as simple sometimes. Do you have any thoughts on why some organizations struggle to bring a compelling mission to their teams?
Well, I think sometimes it's a matter of having kind of a legacy idea that if we just give people tasks, they'll do their work and it will all come together into something useful. Do you see that happen, Viktor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also see like some companies organize around organizational clarity, so they want to be able to look at a map and see what's everyone working on. And talking about components is much easier to understand. If you have a value stream and you're looking at here are the components that are involved, you're responsible for this component, you're responsible for this component, versus looking at an organizational chart and just seeing like value streams, like here are all the different ways we help our customers. It also requires a lot of people to agree what is the value we actually provide to our customers. And that's a difficult conversation to have.
Well, I think that the issue about components is really important because until fairly recently, that was sort of the assumption about how teams would organize. That teams would be organized, you'd have front-end developers and middleware developers and back-end developers working on databases or working on, whatever it was, with a technical focus and a focus on the component within the architecture of the system, which divorces people from the problem we're trying to solve or the benefit we're creating for what group of people, right? So I think in some ways people haven't had a lot of practice. Managers haven't had a lot of practice at thinking in these terms.
If there are some teams or individuals watching this video thinking, yeah, I recognize those symptoms, I guess we need to work with that. Where should they start? What would you recommend them to do?
I think it's one thing that could be interesting is to just visualize, to just go around within the team and ask, what is your interpretation of our mission? Just figure out like how big is the spread? How many different perceptions of the purpose is there? In component teams, there's usually a huge spread. If you ask 10 people, like what's our mission and what value do we provide, there might be up to 10 different definitions. Yeah. And having a conversation with the product owner, or if you're in an organization with project managers, having a conversation about that, it's a good start because everyone usually understands that it is a problem if you go to a product owner and says, hey, in this team everyone thinks that the purpose is 10 different things. So that's one place to start. Visualize how big the perception is.
And then I often work with teams to answer those questions, that I mentioned before, what benefit are we creating or what problem are we solving for what group of people, and gain some agreement on that. Because then you can focus on that external value rather than, we're doing these various technical things to create this great component that talks to this other component, which is interesting, but it doesn't help people make good decisions in the long run. It doesn't help them make good decisions about how the product works, how the interface works.
I would like us to go to the next fundamental condition, which is required skill set to deliver value. Could you please explain why it is important for teams?
I think one of the important things in that sentence is that to deliver value. Many teams are organized around completing tasks. And while that gives some sense of accomplishment, what it means is that a team can't make an impact on the company or the customers, and you get stuck in lots of coordination between teams. That's a difficult situation to be in for team members and for the company.
Would you say that it's common problem that the organizations struggle with?
In my experience, it is. I mean, we have sort of a history of thinking about functional specialties in job descriptions that are, you need to be able to accomplish these 18 technical skills, or this language, or whatever. But in my experience, work happens in the space in between those job descriptions, right? And teams need to be able to bring all of their skills and take advantage of all of their skills, whether they fit in that little job description box or not. So it's really a matter of what skills the team has, their ability to learn, and can they really take advantage of all of their skills, not just what's in the little box of their job description. And it's never perfect, right? You never have a team that has the perfect skill set. It needs to be a reasonably close match, in my experience. And then they need to have some opportunity to learn, or to get some mentoring, or to have access to somebody who can at least review and pair with them to build up the skills. So they're not, as Viktor said, dependent on some outside team to accomplish something. And part of that, again, goes back to a component organization, where if you have people who are specialized in various components, then you're inflicting dependencies on yourself. So it's really about organizing for value rather than organizing around a uniform set of skills. So you have to have the right mix of skills across a technology stack.
Sometimes it is difficult to diagnose your environment and say, are we in trouble? Should we get worried about these fundamental conditions, or is it good enough? Do you have any suggestions on when there are symptoms from your environment that you should start getting worried and start paying more attention to that?
I think so. Like, if you're looking for you could always look at motivation and attrition. That is one data point, or two different data points. But you could also look at cycle time and lead time. Like, if you're looking at the lead time, you're looking at how long it takes from idea to finish. And if you're looking at cycle time, you can measure cycle time from start to finish. And many of these companies who are organized around components, their cycle time is longer than it has to be, or than
How long is longer than it has to be?
Are you satisfying the customer? Are you viable in your marketplace?
Can you adjust as quickly as your competition?
Yeah.
A lot of product owners, or in these cases, in organizations like this, usually have product managers. If you ask them, like, do you think your company is delivering as fastly as you'd like them to? The answer is always, in my experience, no. Like, we want to be faster. So that's one place to start, or like that's one symptom, I'd say.
But isn't it a common motivational point? Everybody wants to be faster. So if you ask, do you think you're fast enough? I would like to be faster.
Well, in a lot of organizations, people say, yes, we'd like to be faster. And the idea is we're going to push people harder, right? But if you're pushing against a system that doesn't allow work to flow through it because there are so many dependencies, I'm waiting for Viktor to do something, Viktor's waiting for you to do something, you're waiting for 5 other people to do something, you can't make that go very fast. Each of these people have different priorities, but if the 3 of us are working together for a goal that we can articulate, we could go pretty fast, right? So in some ways, when I see an organization complaining about teams being slow, and they're organized by component, I mean, that's an obvious issue that they aren't. They have created a situation for themselves where they can't go fast.
And you can just ask Like, gather 5 product owners or gather a few product owners, put them in a room and ask them, what's the value your team delivers to your customers? To your end customers, to your paying customers, and if it's infrastructure team, like to your internal users. And if the answer is, well, we're delivering this component or this, we're delivering the back end for the front end, then basically what they're saying is we're not delivering customer facing or anything that's giving value or producing income. And if you put that together with like motivation and lead time, then you start getting a pattern.
And one of the things I see on a team level is when there's a lot of conflict on a team. It's almost always, not always, but it's very often because they have not agreed on what they're supposed to be doing together, right?
Yep.
They may have, 7 different ideas internally about what they're supposed to be delivering, and it may be technical, it may be some different definition of what's important, but that sort of conflict over what we're doing is always a signal to me that they don't have a clear mission. Like I mentioned, that team that had bickered for 2 years, they didn't have a mission.
If there would be a team or individuals recognizing those symptoms, thinking, yeah, we have long lead time, and that is because we're waiting for this team to finish, and then we're waiting for the other individuals to contribute, and there is a lot of waiting time in our lead time. So if they recognize themselves in this situation, what should they do and where should they start?
Like if they're comfortable, get together a few people from different teams and look at like everyone who's like tried tracing certain stories, everyone involved in this initiative. What were all the activities you did? Start mapping the value stream. Try to quantify what was the pending time, the waiting time, and how much time did we actually spend working on it? What was the value added time? If you show this to management, like look at this. Here we're actually 95% of our time it's just spending in waiting states. That could be a trigger for a larger change.
So I had a really interesting conversation with an executive who his organization was largely component based, and he was very frustrated about their ability to get things done. So he pulled together a group of like 7 people from these various components who were just to do something very focused. And he got them their own working room, and they had a very clear idea of what they were supposed to develop, and they were cross-functional. And he said, see, if you get the right people together, they can do wonderful things. It was fascinating because he didn't generalize it to the rest of his organization, right? He was wondering, what's wrong with these other people that they can't do what this group did? And it was because they were organized with the necessary skills to deliver value, and they had a clear sense of that value was. So sometimes doing a little experiment like that can help people see what it is. Well, let's just try doing something. So let's take one small little deliverable that's important to you and talk about it in a clear way that connects to the customer and get people who have the relevant skills, and we'll do it. We'll do a little experiment. Sometimes that helps people see it. Yeah, and mapping the value stream is always super important for a larger effort, making that sort of change.
You could also start listing all the symptoms you're seeing. I did this with a client recently. We listed and this is something you teach in your workshop, by the way. So I learned it from you.
Oh, well.
Well, so you start looking at the complexity of the organization, like list what's happening in the organization and what's leading to what, like what is the shape of the problem. Does that sound familiar?
A little bit.
That's something you could do. You don't have to be in a certain role or a certain team. You could just get together a few people and start building that. And you could use a wall somewhere in the office and let it grow. And draw arrows between certain things. Eventually, you're going to see certain events that have more arrows pointing towards it and out from it, and those are pretty interesting places to start.
For those people who want to learn more about these topics,
Visit Viktor's blog.
Or visit Esther's blog. Or watch the new video, or the second episode.
And we'll have some resources posted for people to read more about this stuff.
And the examples we're giving about things you can try, we're going to be listing that.
Yep.
Good.
So thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Yeah.
And we hope you liked it. And thank you for the help, Natalia.
Thank you. It was really interesting. Thank you.